if you're not willing to work that hard, that's fine. There are a lot of people who have a good concept of a work-life balance that are probably healthier in many ways. What I sometimes find frustrating among sort of younger people is the desire for the constant advancement and promotion and more money and success without the commitment to working hard enough.
Bradley Tusk is an investor,
political strategist,
philanthropist,
author,
and podcast host.
To me, it's like a combination of talent, work ethic, and risk tolerance. Without all three, it's not going to happen.
What do you look for, like when you're deciding to invest in a startup?
So the first is,
Hey there, my name's Alfie Whattam. Welcome to the Decoded podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you click the follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching this, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Bradley, you've invested in Coinbase and Bird and FanDuel and so many other like massively successful companies. So if we start on the investing side, what do you look for? Like when you're deciding to invest in a startup, what are you looking for in the founders and the team? What do you call it?
it's a huge thing. So the first is, we're a weird fund, right? So the first thing is we're looking at the same stuff as every other early stage investor, which is one, the founder, two, the TAM, and three, the underlying idea. And all three of them have to really check out because, like most VCs, we don't do about 99 out of every 100 deals that we see, right? So there has to be something really special about the founder, and the idea has to be really unique, and the team has to be really big. And then for us, there's a second round, which is there a gating regulatory issue or opportunity that if it were solved, can really drive growth and valuation? If the answer matters yes as well, that's when it makes sense for us to deploy capital.
Okay, so that definitely puts you in a very specific area where you only focus on certain areas. And when that works, that can work really, really well. I'm not sure if you actually invested in Uber, but I know TK, that the founder, said like his company wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't for your help on that regulatory side.
Yeah, I took a lot of my fee in equity. I didn't have money back then to invest, but I got paid in equity and, bet on the company and bet on Travis. And yeah, I mean, look, that was my original introduction to tech. And ultimately, because some of the battles that we fought on the regulatory side were some of the still most well-known, tech political fights that have happened, it taught me a lot, and it also gave me some credibility and reputation, and that's been useful for everything since.
Cool. So before you mentioned the regulatory side, you mentioned like the founder and the CAM and the product. So you said founder first. Like, what is it, Bradley, about like a world-class founder like TK who is like able to just build?
Yeah, it's a great question because we ask ourselves, like, we can never really articulate it well because to a certain extent, there are founders who are world-class that are hyper sort of active and ruthless like Travis, right? Who's just incredibly brilliant and afraid of nothing and totally relentless. And there are others who are, in my portfolio who have been really successful, they're all brilliant, but much more low key, much less aggressive in some ways, and yet still really successful. So, if there is a formula for what makes a great founder, I'm not really sure what it is. Obviously, if you're really smart, obviously you have to work really hard. Obviously, you have to have a really high risk tolerance. And then I would say, either you're a genius on the product side and you have someone incredibly good on the marketing and sales side to help you, or you're a genius on the marketing and sales side and you have an incredible CTO or someone like that. But, it's a little bit like there's that famous Potter Stewart quote. He was a Supreme Court justice in the U.S. And when he was asked to define pornography, he said, "I know it when I see it." I think that's kind of how most VCs tend to address founders too.
Okay. It's just that gut instinct that you get after speaking to thousands of people. You kind of know what.
Well, by the way, you also get stuff wrong, right? Every investment we do, at the time we make the investment, we think it's going to be really successful. And yet, a third of them likely go to zero, another third maybe get to a 1 or a 2x. So, even the best VCs, and I wouldn't put us in that category, but even those who are, they get around all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So outside of venture in politics, you've had quite an extensive career. You've been the deputy governor of Illinois, Michael Bloomberg's campaign manager, the communications director for Senator Chuck Schumer. I know that you're heavily working on the mobile voting project right now. Can you just tell me a little bit more about this? Why is it care? Why is it important?
Yeah. So look, what I learned from my time in politics is every politician makes every decision solely based on the next election. And there are some exceptions. My Bloomberg was certainly one, but by and large, they're really looking at how does any individual decision impact my odds of winning re-election or not. And in the U.S., because of gerrymandering, the only election that typically matters is the primary. Primary turnout's really low, like 10 to 15%. And those voters are usually either the far right or the far left or special interests who could move money and votes in low turnout elections. As a result, those small groups dictate not only who wins office, but then what happens once they're in office. And that gets us either totally one-sided governments, whether that's the state of Texas on the right or the state of San Francisco on the left, or it gets us just a chaos and dysfunction in Washington, D.C., and none of that works. And in reality, most Americans can agree on the solutions to most issues. If you take guns, the vast majority of us would say, don't go door to door and confiscate everyone's guns. But you also shouldn't be able to just walk into a store and easily walk out with an assault rifle. For immigration, most people would say, don't go business to business and raid them and deport everyone who are working. But at the same time, you should have real border security. And the truth is, there's a common sense solution to almost every single issue we have. But because so few people actually vote in the only election that matters, which is the primaries, politicians are only incentivized to behave at the extremes. And that means nothing gets done. And, when I started running all those campaigns to legalize Uber, the way that we won, because at the time we were a tiny little tech startup and taxi was a really powerful industry, was we were able to go to our customers and say, listen, we're under this threat. They're trying to ban us. If you like Uber, please click here and let your city council member or mayor or whoever it was know. And millions of people did. And because we changed the underlying political inputs, we changed the policy output, and we won in every single market in the country. And at some point it hit me like, well, what if they could vote like this? And so that's how we started the Mobile Voting Project. First thing we did was test the hypothesis. So we funded elections in 7 different states. We either deployed military or people with disabilities were able to vote in real elections on their phones to prove what we kind of already know to be true, which is when you make something more convenient, people do it. And then we'd also realized the tech that we were using was perfectly fine for 5,000 soldiers in West Virginia, 7,000 people with disabilities in Oregon. But if the goal was to get turnout from 10 to 40, you needed tech that was more secure at scale. And so we spent the last 4 years building our own mobile voting technology that is end-to-end encrypted, end-to-end verifiable, has biometric screening, multi-factor authentication, air gapping, it's open source. And we're putting that all up on GitHub. It will be free for anyone in the world to use. And then now we're kind of entering the next phase of our project, which is to legalize it. So we've started to run campaigns in different cities around the U.S. to allow people to start voting on their phones in municipal elections, and then work our way up.
It really seems like this will be a case of like not when, but if. Like this technology, it's here. We built it. It works. And it's probably a much better way of doing it than writing something down on a piece of paper and then putting it into a black box that we don't know what happens and then it goes away. So when is this going to happen, do you think?
Good question. So look, if everything goes right and if I can build a real grassroots movement around this, I think we can have this done in the next 10 years. But if not, you're right. Eventually, because eventually we're not going to be voting with these paper or person, whatever else. But, every day that we go under the current system is another day of dysfunction, another day of chaos, and another day where people lose faith in their government. And so, my hope is that over the next 2 years, 3 years, I can get this going in a lot of cities, then get it going in states, then kind of work our way up. It might take on with Democrats, take off before there does with Republicans. I think in a world of Trump, that's probably the case. I'm independent. I really don't like either party, to be perfectly honest. And then my also hope is that this can, it doesn't have to just be the U.S. I mean, in theory, every democracy in the world could use this. So, obviously, you're British. The political parties in the UK already use mobile voting for their party elections. So it's not the voters themselves, but when they're choosing their leaders, they use it. It's used in Estonia. It's used in different places already. So my hope is that we can just get it going wherever we can all over the world, and people see that it works and that it's a much better way to do it, and it goes from there.
I mean, you're right. I'm British. A lot of the issues that we debate with in Britain, we look over at the US and we're quite confused about why it's not as simple as it seems.
This is a quick message to tell you about my company, Alpha AI. We built Lisa, the world's first AI recruiter who finds candidates for you on autopilot. Visit welovealpha.com now to learn how it works, or click the link below in the description. And now, back to the episode.
I'm in SF for the next 2 weeks, and then I'm in New York, where I believe you're based, for a while. In New York, there is an election happening right now. Yeah, well, but I didn't actually have this on the question list, so we can take this out if you want. What's your view on everything that's happening? I guess as an independent, but as somebody who, has worked on one political side, what's your view on what's happening right now with
I mean, look, we've got an election in New York City for mayor in less than 2 months. It's certainly not going to be the incumbent mayor, Eric Adams. He's currently still in the race, but trailing badly. The front runner is named Zoran Mandani. He is a state assembly member, so he's a local legislator here in New York. He's 33 years old. He is a socialist. He's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America Party. He's a very unexpected candidate, right? No one really thought that this guy would win the Democratic primary, but he did. He is an incredibly charismatic, engaging political figure. He ran on an affordability agenda that a lot of New Yorkers could relate to. I think he's very likely to win. And then the question will be, what kind of mayor will he be? If he is governing solely based on a pure ultra left-wing ideology, he's going to have a really hard time because mayor is an operational job. It's not an ideological job. If he is governing pragmatically and says, I want to get the best people I can for every job, and I'm going to make every decision just based on what makes the most sense for New York and not based on anyone's politics, he could potentially be very effective. So we'll see. We'll get a pretty good sense early on because based on who he hires, if they're all people who have to pass a progressive purity test, it's going to be a disaster. But if it's just like, hey, here are these really, really talented people who would be excellent at running the sanitation department, the transportation department, the parks department, whatever it is, then there's a shot he could be quite good.
Yeah. As an outsider looking at his campaign, I feel like he's the only New York candidate that I know about, and he's done a masterful, presentation of putting himself together, the videos that he's made. What do you think about the way that he's run the campaign? Is it quite different to what you've seen?
Yeah, he has run an ultra modern campaign. So, at various points, different candidates sort of figure out a new technology and benefit from it, right? So when JFK ran against Richard Nixon in 1960, the thing most attributed to JFK's win is that they were the first televised presidential debate. JFK was great on TV, and Nixon looked terrible on TV. And JFK won, right? When Barack Obama ran for president, he understood things like text messaging before anyone else, and he used that to raise a lot of money and organize a lot of votes. When Donald Trump ran for president, he really understood social media before anyone else, and he was able to use Twitter and other platforms to propel his win. And I think Mondani's done the same thing, but with YouTube and TikTok and short form video. And, the person who can really master the newest thing that can reach the most people often has a big advantage. And that was the case here.
That last sentence you said is exciting but scary, because the people who have the most reach are oftentimes people that have no understanding or experience at all about politics and about the problems that need to be solved. Whereas that's probably going to be the main metric which ensures future elections are won, the social media account and following. And I don't know if there's a way that we can reverse or change the way that that's heading.
Well, look, on one hand, many elections are a cult of personality, right? So the U.S. presidency has been that way for a very long time. So, you think the last 50 years, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, they were all cults of personality. None of them were the best qualified people to be president, but they resonated with the voters. And I think the more and more that social media just brings everything right to our pocket all the time, that goes from a national perspective to a local perspective. But ultimately, to me, what it really comes down to is how many people are participating in the process. Because when it is relatively few, then they are typically very much of the ideological extremes or there's some particular special interest. And that ends up determining what happens in government and policy. And when it's, a majority of people, then all of a sudden the view of the mainstream becomes a lot more important than typically wins. Right now we have a government that no one has any faith in or trust in because they can't get anything done and they're not incentivized. They're incentivized to fight and stand in the corners and scream at each other and point fingers. And so ultimately, if we want an effective government that actually can deliver results for people, it has to represent the mainstream, and that means radically increasing.
Yes. Outside of politics, Bradley, you've written multiple books. I mean, some of them have been about politics, but other areas as well. But I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and it's an intense project. You have to do a lot of work, and a lot of it is deleting and narrowing it down to the ideas which matter most, and then working with the publishers, getting into stores. I feel like writing books was almost a pre-LLM thing to do, because I don't certainly want to write another one. I'm having too much fun building companies now and doing the podcast, but as somebody who has written books kind of throughout that timeline, what advice would you have on how to be a strong writer for people that still want to do it? It doesn't have to be about books, it can be about a blog, it can be about a Substack, but the art of writing. How have you managed to get to it?
I love to write. So when I was in college, I was actually in the creative writing program, and I worked for the mayor of Philadelphia at the same time. And when I graduated, I almost had to pick a lane. Do I want to try to be a writer? Or do I want to try to be in politics? And I picked politics because I felt like I'm a pretty good writer. I've written, like you said, 3 books, and I run a column for the New York Daily News and a Substack and all that stuff. But I knew where my sort of ceiling was talent. Right? Like I wasn't going to win a National Book Award. I wasn't going to win the Pulitzer Prize. Whereas in politics, I felt like I could do things that would have a real influence and impact on the world. So that's the path that I took. Luckily, it worked out. And because I ended up doing enough things that were interesting, people wanted to publish my thoughts. And so I got the chance to write as well. But the first thing is, I've always just loved to write. So like right now, I'm working on a TV show with no realistic chance of it ever going to air. But I came up with a concept that I thought was really fun around prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi, how you could sort of rig reality to bet on long shots and win a lot of money. Trust me. So I'm writing because I love to write. So I think the first thing is you have to love to write, because the truth is, in the world of LLMs, you probably don't need to know how to do it. So you have to love it. Like, so even if I could have AI write the script for me, that would defeat the purpose, because I get real enjoyment out of the process of writing. The other thing I would say is I find that for me, writing is an important part of the ideation process, right? So I write, I have my podcast that I do twice a week. I teach, I go on TV, I speak publicly. And that's how I go from an incipient idea to something on paper that I can start to explore, to something that I can speak about in a podcast and see if it sounds like it makes sense or not, to ultimately public policy, right? Okay, now I'm going to try to make mobile voting happen. I'm going to try to pass universal school meals in every state. I'm going to get rid of the scaffolding in New York State. Whatever it is that I'm interested in, the writing to me is a key part of that process of deciding what to do and how to make it happen.
Yes. Okay, a lot of people listening to this, they hear the writing, and then you have the investing, and then you have the philanthropy and the podcasting and the politics and the building company. And these are like 100-hour work weeks for each specific job. So this is when I found out you're 21 and you've actually just like massively aged really quickly from stressing yourself too much. But how do you find the time to be successful in so many areas?
It's a good question. I think so. Some of it is, I don't know anyone who has ever succeeded in any meaningful way without working incredibly hard. I don't work 100 hours a week. It doesn't mean you have to work 100 hours a week. But look, when I was 29, I was the deputy governor of Illinois. And I worked for 4 years, 80 hours a week without fail, because that's what the job required. And that was an incredible opportunity. So One is if you're not willing to work that hard, that's fine. There are a lot of people who have a good concept of a work-life balance that are probably healthier in many ways. What I sometimes find frustrating among sort of younger people is the desire for the constant advancement and promotion and more money and success without the commitment to working hard enough to get there. So that's number one. Number two is really risk tolerance, right? So yes, I've worked incredibly hard, but I have also sort of had both success and failure because I'm willing to sort of take risk and put myself out there. And there are things that have worked in politics and tech and books and whatever else. There are things that have failed. I've started companies that have gone bankrupt. I did a SPAC that went to zero. I've run candidates that have lost elections. So, it cuts both ways. So I think if you want non-linear success, A, it's hard work. B, it's risk tolerance. C, it's talent. And by the way, talent isn't just sort of academic pedigree. In fact, I would argue that in many ways, the correlation between going to the absolute best school and then your ability to sort of achieve non-linear success. So linear success would be, okay, I'm going to go to McKinsey and spend the rest of my life there and try to become a partner or Goldman or a law firm or whatever it is. That's fine. To me, that's a very boring career in life, right? But if you're in tech or you're an entrepreneur or certain art or whatever else, and you want, well, because they're non-linear success, to me, it's that combination of talent and work ethic and risk tolerance. And without all three, it's not going to happen. And then on top of that, it becomes, how do you manage things? So one thing that I do is I buy my time, meaning everything that I don't have to do, someone else is paid to do, right? So I don't make reservations. I don't go grocery shopping. I don't do laundry. I don't deal with dry cleaning. I don't pay my bills. Like anything that someone else can do, I have them do. I also hire really good people and I pay them well and I let them do their jobs. And it means I make less money, right? Because, I could run my businesses at a higher margin, but I would rather have the freedom to keep exploring new things. And I can't do that if I'm still constantly managing the old things. And the third is, I try to be really efficient. So like, for example, one thing is like someone emails me, generally speaking, they get a response either immediately or at worst case that day. It very well might not be the response you want because between having a foundation and a venture fund and a political firm, lots of people call because they want one thing or another. But nonetheless, I'm responsive and I deal with things efficiently and I'm really well organized. And, that's all, it takes all of that. And the other question is just, how much does it matter to you? Because the one real negative, you were joking about it, but like you do incur tremendous amounts of stress when you have this much responsibility, you're taking this much risk, this many people are dependent on you to feed their families, whatever it is. And, I don't think I could live any other way that would make sense to me, but I don't know that it's the healthiest way to live. So, I think there are strong arguments on both sides, but if you want it, like you really, really have to sacrifice and you really, really have to go for it. Because, the middle where you think you're doing enough, but it's not enough. So you just become resentful that somehow you were cheated out of your due. Like that's the worst.
Hmm. Hmm. I will give you a lot of credit on the speed of your email response. I think within like 10 minutes, you or your team had said yes to doing an episode, which is amazing. I wish everybody replied that fast.
You know what? By the way, it's just because it's a more efficient, better way to do it, right? That's all. It's not, it's simply like occasionally something just requires a longer response and I have to put it aside till later. But even then, I have a system where it goes in a folder that I can go back to every day. Like I don't end the day without every email dealt with one way or another. But wait, it might be that you're some lunatic and I choose not to respond, but I still made that choice, right? Every text, every phone call. And then it's funny, forever, I have really detailed to-do lists. I just thought that because I'm at the point where I'm actually trying to live more in the present and in the moment. And so I'm working a little bit in the other direction, but that's after a lot of years and luckily, a decent amount of success. But normally, that list would have to be done too. and everything from the previous day would have to be crossed off. And so, it's a neurotic way to live, but it can be very effective.
Bradley, for people that have enjoyed this, they want to learn more about maybe mobile voting or just check out you in general or the podcast or the VC fund, where should they go? What's that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a bunch of ways. So one is BradleyTusk.com has tons of propaganda about me, so you can find that all there. Two would be if it's mobile voting specifically, and you can get links to everything from that. But mobilevoting.org. My podcast is called Firewall. It's my intersection of tech and politics. I've got a Substack that's under my name. And then also, if you're in New York City, and if you're someone who likes to read, I own a bookstore called P&T Knitwear on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. That is an indie bookstore, a podcast studio. It's free for anyone to use, an event space, and a cafe. So if you're up for it, swing by, have a coffee, say hi. And I hope to hear from you one way or another.
I wish I knew that before I'd booked 10 podcast studio sessions when I'm...
By the way, if you can get your money back, you can use mine for free, dude.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. I might follow up with you for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be, just let us know. Because with you, I'll have the bookstore coordinated. But literally anybody can go on our website and actually just reserve a spot and use it.
That's so good. Bradley, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Hit follow, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Introducing Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter. She's an AI agent who works 24/7, screening candidates on autopilot, conducting interviews in 30 different languages, uploading all the best candidates to your applicant tracking system. Hire 10 times faster at 90% lower cost and significantly improve the candidate experience. Visit welovealpha.com to start your free trial now.